So yeah, just a little bit about the Spacious Solidarity Dialogues. They started last year around the time of the pandemic and lockdown, um, as a way for Inroads. It was Inroads members who reached out from different parts of the world saying it was really important to keep talking to each other and building stronger relationships in these times of increased separation, of increased distancing. There was a need to pull ourselves closer together and talk to each other. So the first dialogue that we had was many different accompagnantes and doulas from different parts of the world who gathered. And those dialogues have continued and have grown into a few newer areas of people's work, which include narrative change and also folks working on reimagining legal change. Um, so yeah, and Inroads has been independent as of last year, as of September of 2020. And with that independence, Inroads has adopted new values, not really new, but values that we are working more intentionally towards. Those are community care, equity, authentic engagement, and fearless passion. Um, and yeah, part of our goals are to create more such spaces where solidarity building spaces, aligning spaces, caring spaces, supporting spaces. Um, so that's to do with the larger kind of goals and the work that the network, which is all of us together. We also know that for this particular session, a lot of you had personal goals that we asked you on your registration forms. And both Sara and Adhiambo, who will be sharing to bring us into this conversation and lead us and kind of take us through their journeys, have kept in mind the questions and the goals that all of you shared before coming to this actual session. So it's the collective goals that really make up this space. While Sara and Mikreen will hold the floor for the first bit of the session, uh, we wanted to encourage everyone to use the chat as much as possible in the initial part of the session to dialogue with each other, to put out any kind of question that's coming up for you. And there will be a time a little later when Sara and Adhiambo will call everyone into dialogue and chat a little more as well on the mic. So let me just introduce both Adhiambo and Sara. So Adhiambo, hi Adhiambo.
Hi Aditi, how are you?
Welcome.
Thank you.
Good, good, good. It's nice to be here on the day of our session together. So Adhiambo is based in Nairobi, Kenya. Her journey in reproductive rights has been for ensuring that women and girls in her home country get quality, safe abortion information, including the legal context and referral mechanisms to enable them to make informed reproductive health choices and get quality, confidential, and non-judgmental safe abortion and post-abortion services. By providing this information, this enables her to provide safe and open spaces for conversations and advocacy. And Adhiambo is a part of the Auntie Jane hotline. So welcome. And along with Adhiambo, we have Sara, who is an Irish woman based in London, UK. Sara has been was a volunteer with Alliance for Choice since Sara was 15 years old, and ever since has been talking about abortion. Sara has supported friends and families in Northern Ireland. Her journey in reproductive rights has been based on supporting friends and loved ones in their abortion journeys and seeing firsthand the barriers put in place to access abortions in her home country. And as a result, Sara decided that she would always be open to discuss abortion to lessen the stigma. Sara now works in London with Irish expats and works on creating safe spaces for abortion conversations, accompanying abortions, especially in the LGBTQ community. Sara was a part of Lukt Kabrak, which was an amazing, I hope I pronounced it right, doula course that took place last year. I think one of the very first, and Sarah will tell us more about that during this session. So that's all I know so far, to be honest, about Sara and Adhiambo. Sara and Adhiambo have also just recently met each other. So I wanted to invite both of them and also encourage all of us to listen in and appreciate the braveness, the vulnerability, the openness that they are offering to take on this role as the two people in dialogue with all of us here today. So welcome, both of you. I can see folks have been putting in the chat a little bit about themselves, their names, what abortion accompaniment feels like for them, and what is possible in a world where our abortion journeys are supported. So welcome to everyone who's been writing in the chat, and people who are joining in, please do join in the chat as well. Sara and Adhiambo, over to you. I'm going to pull up the guiding questions to help us.
Thank you, Aditi. Thanks for having us. This is so exciting. Adhiambo and I are obviously now best friends from all our chats, so it's all good.
Yes, we are. And definitely, I'm super excited to see you again. And let's do this. Let's talk.
Let's talk. Let's do this.
Yeah.
All right, Adhiambo, I'm going to ask you first. How did you begin doing the work of accompanying abortions, and what are your personal and political motivations? So tell us about how you started.
Yeah, I by July 1st counting, it will be my 6th year accompanying women in their abortions, and it's been a journey, and I can tell you it's been an uphill one, from learning to relearning and unlearning, and just like having my values clarified every other time. And this has been motivated by my work with community women and girls. And I can say, if you'd have asked me this question over 5 years ago, I'd have given a very different answer, because my values were totally something else. I was like that person who's like, no to abortion. It's a crime and everything. But from that moment, I went to work with community women and girls, listening to their stories, seeing the situation on ground. And I'm like, that aspect of freedom of choice for women and girls in my country, I was like, I should be that platform. I should be the one creating that space where women and girls in Kenya have access to information, whether it's in Nairobi, whether it's in the whole country. I just saw that urgent need of women getting this information, because one thing that happens is women are needlessly dying in Nairobi, in Kenya, basically. And that is one thing that really motivated me. There should be no more deaths or complications from unsafe abortion in my country. And the way I said, just getting these stories, just getting the real time situations on ground motivated me to just create that platform where women can exercise choice, women can get freedom, women can get autonomy, their bodily autonomy. So yeah, that's basically it.
That is super inspiring. That's amazing. I'm probably on the same like journey with you, that I grew up in a very kind of Catholic, kind of religious background, and abortion was like a no-go. And then in university, or within school and university, it was exactly the same. Nobody talked about it. Everybody, anybody who got it done, they were bad, like it wasn't good. And I turned into being the person everybody came to ask questions, because I was going to read and find out about it. Because again, it's about choice. It's about kind of women's and pregnant people's reproductive rights. And I was the person that used to have to go and ask for the morning after pill for their friends, and had to like go and get like the condoms, the free condoms, and like hand them out on Fridays in school. Mm-hmm. I used to be like, here you go, guys. I'd be the girl with the condoms, even though I never used them, but that's beside the point. But I think the point is that coming from a really kind of religious background and finding out about kind of women's right, this is like a political right, this is a human right, this is, you know, your bodily right to be able to access things, and actually supporting friends to have to leave the country to access abortions is what really kind of got me to this, like got me to this now, is like the idea that we had to, I'll talk about it later, but basically the journey of actually going to get an abortion in the UK is insane. So we might not have kind of unnecessary deaths, let's just say, but we will have so many people who have like attempted to take their own lives, or in deep depression, or stuck in relationships because they can't access abortion. So I think, yeah, for me, again, it's about choice and about your right to decide what you want to do with your body. So that's kind of it
And
for
I
me.
just
What I
love,
mean,
sorry.
go, go, go.
I'm just saying, I just love the fact that you began this when you're 15. Like, that is super amazing. Like, in a human mind, you're like, at 15, what do you really know? And you just wanting to create that space is super inspiring. I really draw a lot of inspiration from that, of course, years later, but that is super amazing coming from you.
Babes, don't, you make me cry.
We'll cry together. We'll cry together. So yeah, you're allowed to.
Thank you. Thank you. That was lovely. Oh, Karen, you're super amazing too. I just saw Karen
Yes,
wrote
you are.
something. So what's been your high moments and your challenges on this kind of work?
I think let me just start with the high moments, because when I start talking about the challenges, I think I'll break down. Um, the high moment is number one. I
I
run
hear
a
you.
hotline. I'm a hotline counselor. Apart from doing other things in my advocacy work, I am a hotline counselor. And when a woman or a girl calls in, or any person who needs an abortion services calls in, and I provide that information from a friend's perspective. I'm a counselor, but I have to be a friend at the end of the day, because most call in, they are panicking, they do not know their options, they are stressed out. And I'm like telling them, you know what, it's going to be well. These are your options. This is what will happen. This is what needs to happen. And I'll walk with you through this journey. And after the process of them accessing the services, they're calling in, they're texting in, they're WhatsApping in, and they're like, I am so blessed. And I'll quote words that have been used severally, like, you are just super amazing. I am so blessed. I was happy and I've gotten another chance in life. That
Yeah.
always makes me tear up. And I'm like, wow, this means a lot to so many people. I'm not just doing this to pay the bill, but I'm also doing this to give that woman or girl a second chance in life. So when I get that feedback, I'm like, yes,
Yes.
something has happened. Some woman has gotten to make an informed choice and accessing very quality and safe services. Those feedback keep me going every other time. Now
Totally.
to the challenges. Wow, when a caller calls in and they're like, I do not have finances, because what we do at the hotline is provide information and being that link between the caller and the service
Mm-hmm.
provider. And
Mm-hmm.
the caller calls in and they're like, I do not have money. My pregnancy is way advanced and I need these services. And then the service provider is like, that needs to be a little bit expensive. Sometimes I mostly break down. I'm like, I wish I could help more than just providing the information. Or someone calls in and they're like, they began the abortion process and it was very unsafe. They're calling in with complications. It's an emergency. And then you're looking at the database of the service provider, the location of the person calling in, compared to where the service providers are located. And like, this is an emergency. but the caller is like, I cannot make it on time to get to the service provider. And I'm like, how I wish I could just come in, how I wish there were just mechanisms in place to even help these people have access to the nearest facility, facilities close to them. Like, it really breaks my heart when we get to that dead end.
Yeah.
You know, it,
Totally get that.
it really breaks my heart, and it comes in every other time.
I get that. I'm so sorry. I wish I could just give you a massive hug. It's like, it's so, I know, just hug each other.
Thank you.
No, that's it. But like you said, it's that kind of, that can be really heartbreaking, but you're still being able to support some people. You know, at least it's not like, you know, it's not every single person. Like, you're able to kind of support as many people as possible. But like, that's really interesting. It's like the idea around, like, as I said here, what kind of about self-care thing around, like, you know, you wish you could help and you wish you could go that bit further, but like, how do you look after yourself after those kind of calls?
Sorry, what, that was a question, like my self-care practice?
Yeah, like, how do you look after yourself? Yeah.
Like, yeah, before even getting into my self-care practices, I remember the first few years I used to break down. I got to a point where I went into depression, and because I was really sympathetic most of the times and carrying the load home, and I'm like, I wish I could do more. And gradually it got a toll on me. But after that, I sought help. Number one, our team, we have debriefs like every other time, at least monthly. We have debriefs twice a month.
Yeah.
Unless it's really an emergency, we have debriefs twice a month. And in our organization, we've been enrolled into counseling sessions. So that really goes a long way. The counseling sessions, the therapy sessions, we have sometimes half day of work, and we have in other volunteers to step in just to like offload some of the work from my shoulders. And it's really, really been helpful. And just learning to be more empathetic than sympathetic, not just carrying what I cannot bear at home. I'm like, what is it I can bear? What is it that is within my control? What is it that I can support with? And what is it that I cannot support with? Just having that in mind and knowing how much I want to take in and how much I want to support. So that has really been very, very helpful, because I also find myself working off hours. But even if I work off hours, I know how much I can take in and how much I cannot take in, and just getting those therapy sessions and the self-care practices I've just mentioned.
I love it. That's right. Because it's that point, like, as you said, this is not just a job that pays your bills. Like, you pay your bills, but you also take stuff home, you think about it, you know, like, because it's the same thing. It's that idea that, like, I'm constantly going, what can I do more? Like, I am not even in my country right now, and I'm still trying to keep on top of it, keep an eye on what's happening, supporting people, pushing out information, you know, calling people, asking people if they can get X, Y, or, you know, like, whatever they need. And I think there's that part where you have to, like, in a self-care way, you have to go, I'm doing as much as I physically can within the, you know, the framework that is in our countries. And we are only one person, but if we all look after each other and look after ourselves, we can kind of work together and be amazing. I totally get what you're saying.
I'll pass the same question to you, Sarah. And what have been your highs and lows?
What have been my highs and lows? Oh goodness. I think the high was when abortion was decriminalized in Northern Ireland and made legal in October 2019. That was amazing. So I was here in London. Yes, Katie. And the idea that, like, just watching it happen and unfold, and it was beautiful. Like, it was really beautiful. I'm getting goosebumps thinking about it. But when it was officially declared, I did feel a bit like that was one of the challenges for me, is like that loss, that I can't be like they're going, yes, like everybody high five. So I was like texting everybody being like, you know, it's going to be amazing. But I think the bigger challenge for me is that within the UK, so London is like in England, and UK is Northern Ireland, as soon as October 2019 happened and people were like, congratulations, yay, everybody forgot about it. Like everybody just stopped talking about it. And it was not on the news anymore. It was not, you know, and then COVID happened. So we actually haven't had anything but brought in. So the law has changed, but women and pregnant people and girls are still having to travel to England to get abortions. So like that is the massive challenge for me. I like my anger is so much, but I'm also trying to be like, relax, calm down. But I think the point is that that's the major challenge for me, is that people forgot about it. The rest of the UK have forgot about it. I mean, like, it's okay, you're legal now. And it's like, that's not it. We need implementation. We need networks in the communities. We need people to talk about this. This needs to be part of, you know, health and sex education in schools. It needs to have a massive holistic change in our culture in Northern Ireland that I do not see happening. So like, even like you can see the statistics on Alliance for Choice's website, there's like over 100 people traveled to England for abortions during the COVID lockdown. So they had to put themselves at risk, they had to put their families at risk, they had to put their loved ones at risk so they could access this life-saving, normal, you know, normal human procedure. So that's a challenge for me, to be perfectly honest. Apparently, a couple of people have attempted to commit suicide as a result of not being able to travel. And it's like, that's the point. It's like the law, the writing in black and white is never going to help until it's actioned on. So currently, that's a massive challenge. And again, I'm just going to plug it. Alliance for Choice have now got a petition going to talk to the Minister of Health in Northern Ireland to enact some of these regulations and to make it happen in Northern Ireland. So that's on their website as well. So everybody go sign the petition. We need like 500 more people. Whoop, whoop. So yeah, that's it. Self-care wise, I guess I just try and like switch off. Sometimes you just have to. Sometimes you have to mute the phone. Sometimes you have to just like put on some awful television or awful music and just dance and just be silly, you know. And I think the point is that we have to just keep looking forward. I think self-care is for me looking forward and like knowing that things will get better, and they have got better, but we just have to keep pushing it. So that's me.
Wow. I just love how progressive your laws are and how progressive your systems are, even if it's on paper. I just love it because looking back home, I'm like, it gets frustrating from the policy makers and the implementation to the opposition with misinformation and always being on our backs. It gets crazy. It gets crazy as much as our laws progressive, fine, as much as the legal context in our country is so much restrictive, but the laws are a little bit progressive, of course, and the policymakers are so skeptical about implementing what is really provided for. So I really love how progressive your laws are, and it even makes the space riper for the women and girls from your side to just have access. And let's just hope, regardless of the challenges, things are going to get better. So yeah, kudos to your countries and your policies.
We're getting there.
You will.
Okay, so this is questions around experiences of accompanying abortions. So yeah, I think maybe Adhiambo, if you want to talk about the digital security and kind of the constraints for the hotline work, I think you're better to speak for that.
Yeah, so part of our work is engaging with our target audience, because we created caller profile based on the data that we get and the calls that come in at the hotline. And one of the biggest space where our callers interact with us or get information about the hotline from are the digital spaces. And of course, the digital spaces the digital space in Kenya, of course, globally, it's getting wider and wider every day. And as much as it's getting wider every day, there are also risks. It's an opportunity, but there are also risks that come along accompanying women on their abortions using the digital spaces. And when I talk about digital spaces, most of these spaces are the social media platforms, websites, and everything. And we interact even through emails. But again, it gets crazy when sometimes it's hard to see who's the opposition and who's not, who's a prank caller,
Yeah.
or who's someone who's just pranking you to get information about the space. But one thing that we have done in terms of digital security is, number one, uh, anti-Jane hotline does not have a face. There is no face to anti-Jane hotline. So no one will even point a finger to, like, even in the social media spaces, there is no face to anti-Jane hotline. There is no location to where the hotline is located. And we just like, it's a virtual hotline. We are just in the space providing information and ensuring that women and girls have access. So in terms of digital security, so far, nothing major, because we try and have our security practices in place. And of course, you'll just see an avatar of Auntie. You'll never identify, no one will ever identify Auntie to someone specific.
Yeah.
And that has been helpful of over the years. And in terms of financial constraints, I'll talk of financial constraints in terms of the callers, because number one, the hotline used to be prepaid. A good thing we went toll free, because one of the things that really came up was women and girls calling in and they're using their airtime to call. So, like, one way to just mitigate this is to ensure that women and girls are not financially constrained when it comes to using airtime to making the call. Thus, we went toll free. Like, they can call in, talk for hours without their airtime being used. And again, in terms of finance and financial constraints, we have like memorandum of understanding with the service providers that we work with. Some are part of this network. And in our conversations, we're like, let's just ensure that no woman or girl has been sent back home because of finances. So it ought to be extremely subsidized. It has to be extremely subsidized. And for the women and girls who are able to pay, they pay fully. And this will also supplement or support the women and girls who are not able to pay. So, like, no woman and girl is sent back from the facility when they've gone to have access to the abortion services. So those are some of the practices that we have in place to ensure that these are mitigated. But of course, it's not 100%. Sometimes it really gets challenging, even from the provider side. Some of the providers we work with have had issues with the law. You know, the opposition is always on the case. Their facilities are being aired in our media places, like they're being termed as quacks and murderers. But again, we also ensure that our service providers are also protected. Even when we're sharing their contacts, we do not mention names. Like, we ensure that they're protected in all the spaces available.
I think that's really, that's the thing, because it's, you said earlier about checking to see if somebody's doing like a prank or is like a troll. And I totally see that whole, like, the idea around like people being like anti-abortion and coming for the people who are trying to support, like yourself, trying to support, you know, your women and girls in Kenya and Nairobi. And there's the law that came in Northern Ireland in 2019 discussed the idea around buffer zones for like at clinics. So currently in Northern Ireland, there are a few like kind of reproductive rights clinics. So it's for everybody. So they're going for like, not just for kind of abortion access, they're going for like, you know, just sexual health. And there is people outside that are like harassing people who are going in. So that could be like anybody going in to get like the pill, to get, to get condoms, whatever. And there are people who are like usually who are far right Christians with like placards and pictures of abortions. And so that within this law that came in 2018, they're asking that buffer zones be put in place. So there's that kind of like physical safety that people don't really people forget about as well. So I know some people on this call will live in countries where it's similar as well, that there'll be people protesting outside them. Because even like, so when I helped a lot of my friends access abortion when we were in teenagers, we had to go, the thing that will always sit with me is that I knew we had to get to England, but obviously we were like, how do we get to England? We're like 18, 17, 18. It's like, I don't have to have a passport, do you have a credit card, whatever. I remember having to ask my mum, and my mum was like, take the credit card, do whatever you need to do, get yourselves their back sorted. And that was one of the things that like really blew my mind, because if we hadn't had like my mum's credit card, no, it wouldn't have happened. End off, like, because we had to pay to get to the airplane, we had to pay to get on the airplane, we needed passports, we needed to travel from the airport to get to the clinic, we then needed to stay over because the clinic would only take us in the evening. And it was one of those, like, it was literally costing like about £500 for a for a 1 day trip, and that's a lot of money. It's a lot of money now. It's a lot of money when you're 17, and I think that is one of the big things that still hits me. The whole, we talked about the challenges earlier, the idea that like people will just be like, oh well, you can still access it, it's fine, just access it through the NHS. And I'm like, but you still have to get to England or Scotland or Wales to access it. And yeah, and then when you get there, it's even happening in London. There's now more people who are protesting outside the abortion clinics. So I think there's lots happening out there. We're just trying to support people. It's all about choice. Those people can choose to protest, that's fine. But you can also choose to protest away. You can go away and protest. Like, people have their right to choose, but also that's horrible.
You're mentioning that, and it's reminded me of some protests we had I think 2 years ago or something. And of course, the religious extremists who are like anti-choice and anti-everything. And we used fire to put out fire, if there is something like that. And we used biblical verses. We used the word to tell them, even as we are using religion to justify whatever it is that is happening. Do not judge. Do not condemn so that you're not condemned, And it was really powerful. They were like, these people who are pro-abortion, they also know the word. And they're like, yes, we also know the word, and we have to get this going. So it really put them down, because sometimes our counter responses really worked along with. They're bringing in the word, we also have the word. And when you're checking the word, you're like, okay, these guys are telling us something. So like, it was really an amazing experience during that time. And
that's really good.
Yeah, so.
I love the imagine you just going down a Bible going, right, let me get the right one.
It was so amazing. It was so amazing just getting the verses that go along with our course. And it was really a powerful tool of engagement at that time.
That's brilliant. That is so good. I applaud you right there. Oh, look, we're moving swiftly on. Let's talk about religious leaders and how we talk to people. I think that's you again, babe. How we talk to people who are coming at it from a different point of view.
I think I'll respond to this by something that happened recently, and getting to religious leaders who have been the top opposition in my country has been crazy, because this group literally controls the country. This group literally controls the government. And it's really been crazy, even just getting a handful of them and engaging with them. But slowly by slowly, we've been having this conversation, and it's been amazing. I think a week or two ago, I was facilitating a session with the religious leaders on comprehensive sexuality education and access to abortion. And
Amazing.
just having that open space and asking them very realistic questions, reality, morality versus reality question. Like, because of course, the angle of engagement has always been morality. And they're like, number one, morality is very relative. Whatever it is that is moral to you is not moral to someone else. But again, just engaging them with the morality versus reality point of engagement. And we're like, the people who are having complications or are losing lives from unsafe abortion are the people in your congregation. That is number one fact that we really cannot overlook. And number two, the people who are accessing these services are part of your congregation. And some of them are still men and women of the cloth. They are facilitating these processes. It's a high time that we do not we do not bury our heads in the sand, and just having that conversation. Of course, they were so attacking at some point, but at the end of the conversation, they were like, this is true. It's a high time we need to put this conversation in our spaces. It's a high time we need to address this because we are losing our congregants every other day. And I loved the fact that from a group of 20 religious leaders, all of them unanimously were like, we are going to introduce these conversations in our churches and our places of worship. Number one, they are going to have conversations around comprehensive sexuality education. And they even went further and asked, now, if our congregants ask about access, what are the platforms where can we make referrals to? And of course, we were very much there to provide the information. We're like, do not worry about their security, do not worry about it being confidential. Just give them these available resources. Any other time they want to call, they want to chat, there's someone at the other side of the line to just hold them and make sure that they have access to safe services. And that was super amazing. Like that a week or two ago, it was really amazing. But it's work in progress. It is work in progress. So we are still getting allies to our side, we are doing the weighing, we are doing the mapping. Who are the staunch opposition people? Who are lying on the fence? Who can we draw to our side? And of course, we work towards drawing the people who can be drawn to our side. And it hasn't been swift, it hasn't been easy, but I can say progress. There is some very, very good progress.
Can I just say that is incredible? Look at you being all like, oh, don't worry, just talking to religious leaders, being a that is so good. And I think the thing is, as you said, it's the idea around like this continuous kind of conversation being had, like this drip feeding, kind of being like, this is going on. You can get on board and be friends and like support people, or you can just be left behind, and especially as things are changing, like as you said, their congregants, they're leaving. People, it's the 21st century. People want support and want to ask questions. But no, I think it's amazing. I'm really pleased with you. I'm really pleased with the work you're doing. But yeah, absolutely. Adhiambo, whoop, 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 round of applause. But I think the thing is that I obviously am not working at this as like a job. This is not my job. I'm just doing this, luckily volunteering. I'm doing work in other places. But the idea of like, I literally talk about abortion left, right, and center. I'm like, do you know? And everybody's just like, oh no, don't invite Sarah to a dinner party because Sarah will talk about abortion at the dinner party. Because why not? Why not? That's the thing. I think the whole thing around me growing up and the way I grew up, I think the thing is that we have to talk about it, continuously talk about it to break the stigma. Because what is it? It's like 1 in 3 people who can get pregnant will have an abortion, you know, in their lives. So it's like, I know I could rhyme off a list of people, I'm not going to obviously, but I could rhyme up a list of people that have had abortions, people who are in families, people who are single, people who are LGBT, people who are trans. The point is that everybody accesses this. This is a basic healthcare procedure. And the idea, like for Alliance for Choice, they're moving it away from like the religious and the political conversations and just pushing it into the human right conversation. Because like the WHO talk about it. What is it? There's NICE guidelines that talk about kind of how to access abortion. There's all these global organizations that are saying, yeah, this is a basic health right. Why can't we talk about it? Like everybody else talks about, like, we'll talk about like their pregnancy and like their journey and different things. But some people will talk about that they'll need to stop that pregnancy for whatever reason, and allowing people to have those kind of conversations and feel safe, you know, and heard, I think is really important. So yeah, I'll always joke about abortion and chat and be like, who has an abortion today? Abortion's for all. Like I'll just be obviously joking about it. But I think that's part of it, is that we have to break down this kind of stigma and this hush hush, like taboo talking about it, like talk behind closed doors. So the more we talk at parties about it, the more people are going to know about it and be able to access it and know that they can access it and that it's a normal day-to-day thing. It's been happening for years, thousands and thousands of years before the internet, before everything. People have access to abortions. So I think we just need to keep those conversations open and loud and clear.
I totally agree. I totally agree. We're even having this conversation and I'm at the hotline. And guys, that's a call. So
I was gonna say, you gotta take your call.
That's a call at the hotline. But yeah,
take a call?
It gets into the system, and I'll definitely do a follow-up on that.
Brilliant.
And
okay.
Yeah, I know at some point you might have mentioned it, but just getting into the next question, how has abortion been important to your work? I hear you're so passionate about it. Just the way you're speaking about it oozes passion from your voice. How has it been important to you? I know you've mentioned it, but you can just tell us.
No, thank you. I think there's one of the things that I didn't realize I was an activist until somebody actually told me I was, you know. I just saw this as a standard. Well, obviously we don't have it, so we're going to fight for it and we're going to get it. And if we've had to travel to get it for years and years and years. So abortion technically has been legal in the UK since 1969. Northern Ireland didn't get it till 2019. And for me, that is so like a fundamental problem in our like world. And like obviously it's further afield, like there's different places, there's Poland, there's Malta, there's Gibraltar, there's lots of places that are having difficulties accessing it. But I think for me, the discussion around abortion has really supported my kind of growth is looking at feminism and looking at activism for LGBT rights as well. So I was very lucky to work in Stonewall, which is an LGBT rights charity. And now I work as a community engagement. So I feel like my work around abortion and helping others access abortion has helped me figure out that I want to be an advocate and support people and be able to, as you said earlier, be able to kind of be that person that people can know that they can ask the questions and you'll have the answers. Or even if you don't have the answers, you'll know who to ask, you know, that kind of way. So I think that's the abortion access for me, like sparked something that made me realize that I just wanted to make sure everybody had free, safe, legal abortion, and now local. But that's just me.
I love how you put it, and it just sums it like just making sure that everyone has access to safe. Now, in your context, it's legal.
Yeah.
So just having access to safe and legal abortion, that is super, super important. And I think for me, it just brought out the humanity in me, you know? It brought out the humanity in me, looking at human rights from a totally different angle and just sparking that conversations or initiating that conversations around access and safety and just having the conversation around what is legally provided in my context to ensure that we use that as a loophole for women and girls to have access to safe and legal abortion in my country. So that is super amazing.
I think we're on the same page somehow in our brains.
That is super amazing.
Oh, your phone is going again. Do you need to get it? Are you okay?
I am okay. I have noted it down and I will definitely call them back.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Let's have a look at this. Community models of care. So, how has your experience been as part of your community of care? So, in Auntie Jane, how have you felt it's worked? What do you love about it? Oh, you're on mute.
Sorry. Yes, the fact that we are able to, like, any woman or girl in whatever part of the country is able to reach us and talk to us is super
Mhm.
amazing. Like that journey of being grounded or confined in one geographic place to just expanding to the whole country has just been amazing. And just the expansion of the networks to ensure that women and girls have access to these services has just been amazing. And the fact that we can have these spaces, we can have these conversations, we can provide information, we can provide referrals. I mean, that has been something that it's been an amazing experience for me. Like knowing that I know someone who knows someone who can help a woman or girl is it's really been so amazing. And just knowing that anyone around the country can just call in, get information, and get a referral has also been super, super amazing. And another experience just working at this hotline, and I think I mentioned it when we began the conversation,
Mhm.
is the process of learning and learning and relearning every other day. I get to do something new. I get to have new experiences. I get to hear new stories. I get new challenges. Like I grow every step of the way, whether it was 1 year ago, whether it was 3 years ago, whether it's now, I get to find myself in new spaces and just having these conversations boldly every other day. And I think that is just priceless. It's been amazing.
Yeah,
Maybe
I
I
totally
pose the
agree.
question to you. How has your journey been? How has your experience been?
I think it's been really interesting. It's been, as you said, the learning, the relearning, the educating yourself, the kind of like just continuously pushing yourself. I think is really important. I think the looked cabra. Aditi. I cannot pronounce it either, so do not worry, babes. It's Irish, so don't even come for me, Ireland. I don't know, but the point is around the abortion doulas, kind of how it grew out. I basically had been personally, I had been looking at the idea of doula ship, looking at kind of pregnancy doula. And I do think it's incredible the whole idea of being an advocate for that person and making sure they get heard, even if they're going through like medical treatment, that they are the ones that are in control. And I think with the idea of abortion doula, I was a bit like, well, I can't be an abortion doula. Like, how can I help people? And then like we worked, Naomi and Emma from Abortion or from Alliance for Choice held the pilot of abortion doula training. And they basically were like, everything you've done up to this stage is you being a doula. You've always been a doula. Like you've always been supportive. You've also always been that person in your community that people come to. People ask your support. Like you've always done it. You just didn't have a name for it. So I think the idea of like creating the pilot for the abortion doulas, I think is incredible. And I think the way they spoke about it, the way they encouraged us to get to know each other, the way we have a WhatsApp group now, and they're very much focused on the idea of like self-care, community care, and looking out for each other. And I think to me that's incredible. And I think the idea of abortion doula and doulian generally, I think is one that's a really important job. And even on Alliance for Choice's website, again, what they've said amazing things about like you're the person that kind of falls between the cracks. So like the person might know that they can access things, but they don't really know how, or they're a bit scared, or and it's the same with Adhiambo. It's like you go and you support those people, like whether you're on the phone, whether they texting you, whether you're WhatsApping, going like, you'll be okay, this will be okay, this is how it is. You're just very practical, offering that support that maybe people don't have at home. And I think for me that it radiates out. Like, you obviously care so deeply, you can see it, like it's coming out of you, and it's beautiful. And I think that's you being able to offer that support, and like me being able to offer support when I do. And I think people see that, and then it will radiate out, and they'll offer support to other people, or they'll be like, have you heard of anti-G, or have you heard of the abortion doulas? So I think there's a whole thing around kind of community engagement with douling, and talking about abortion, and talking about the practical aspects of it, and also demystifying it, that I think you do as well, which is really cool. I think it's very cool. What do we say? Oh, here we go. What do you think? Because, okay, obviously you've been talking to important people in your community and in your world, but what do you think that you could give advice to of like policymakers and lawmakers? So like talking about the idea that like we're the people who support the people who need these accesses. What do you think that the lawmakers could do to make that more kind of substantial?
So one conversation that has been happening in the policy space in my country is all about the universal health coverage and the Vision 2030 for the country, and health being one of the pillars, with maternal health being one of the pillars. And of course, we have these conversations of there's no way you're going to disengage access to safe and legal abortion from maternal health, because that is one angle that our policymakers always miss. And we're like, as people accompanying these women in their abortions, number one major cause of the high maternal mortalities in Kenya is unsafe abortions. And these are conversations that we really cannot overlook. So we are coming from that angle of, yes, you as policymakers are talking about universal health coverage and whatever the 4 development pillars you have for the country by 2030. And as much as you're talking about universal health coverage and maternal health, you are missing the point of what are the main causes of maternal mortality. And there's no way you can address as a country maternal health without addressing the causes of maternal mortalities. And now this is just a space of telling it as it is, bringing the realities that our policymakers tend to overlook most of the times, the realities they do not want to engage in. So bringing the realistic conversations, bringing in the data and statistics, telling them, fine, we'll talk about malaria, we'll talk about hypertension during pregnancies, we'll talk about every other thing, and us overlooking access to safe and legal abortion, or even post-abortion post-abortion care is crazy. Like us not having that conversation is totally uncalled for, and it definitely would bear fruit. So as people accompanying women in their abortions, we have that conversation from whatever pillars the policymakers are trying to provide. And they're like, you need to look at health from a holistic point of view. And from that engagement, of course, we'll engage, and they're like, this is important because there's no way you're going to realize maternal health. There's no way you're going to realize universal health coverage without talking about these real causes to maternal mortality rates.
I totally 100% agree. I think that's the thing around, like, even this next question is the community vision of abortion care. That's exactly what it is. The idea that these policymakers and lawmakers are kind of like sitting up, in their high tower, in their nice suits or whatever, and being like predominantly men, predominantly like cis het men. And the idea that like they're just like, well, it's not something we think about. And it's the idea that it's crazy because the rise in like midwifery has exploded recently because people just want that care. people want to be seen and heard and told that they'll be listened to. So like in the UK, there's been loads of kind of medical malpractice cases against people who are given birth, and the doctors have like done things that they said they wouldn't do, but they just did it. So like people have been like stitched up, people have been like cut, and they said they weren't going to be. So I think there's a point where like abortion care, looking at it as a holistic approach, and looking at being an abortion doula, and working with midwives and working with people who are on the ground, and actually making sure that everybody in the community, you know, hears that person who's going through that experience. It's that whole thing around like, it takes a village to raise a child. It takes a village to get rid of an unwanted pregnancy. Do you know what I mean? So it's like this idea that like we can't, it's not an individual. This is why I like talking about it, because I like talking about it in normal conversation, because the idea that like if we keep stigmatizing it, we keep pushing it behind closed doors, people will continue to think that it's not something that they need to deal with, and will continue not to care about it, will continue not to be like, yeah, we need, as you said, holistic like health centers that offer all access to reproductive rights, like, and reproductive kind of health. It doesn't need to just be abortion, it needs to be all of the things. So yeah, totally agree. I think community work is the way forward, because otherwise we're just going to be all shouting at each other from different aspects, and we may as well all work together and like channel our strength.
And I just love that you've even answered our next question, like that community vision of abortion care. Thank you so much for bringing that up. So maybe we can go to the next question.
I think we're nearly done. Oh my gosh, we're done.
You made it, even though those were the questions those were the questions that folks who are sitting in the audience had asked. And some were the questions you asked each other beforehand.
Amazing.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing. And we now have space for everyone who's been listening in or in the chat to jump in and join in the conversation. So
fabulous. Let's see.
So here's an invitation to everyone. Thanks for listening. Thank you, of course, to Adhiambo and Sara for sharing about a wide range of things that are personal, political, community, your learnings, your unlearnings. And I'm sure it brought up, if someone in there who's been listening wants to share an experience, wants to ask a further question, please feel free to jump on the mic. I haven't been looking at the chat, so Katie G, if there was any question that went unanswered. Shante, I see your hand up, so please go ahead.
Hi. Okay. Well, I was about to say good morning because it's morning here in Jamaica, but hi everyone. I guess my question would be, I live in Jamaica where our post-colonial history created a directive that outlaws or criminalizes abortions. So it's been very difficult for us to work around that. If anything, I think we've been lobbying the government for the last 35 years. And every time the issue of morality comes up, the church as an institution has significant backing power because they are led by men, one, and two, our politicians cater to them and their point of views because they are huge funders for their campaigns, as well as they lead a large enough congregation that can sway their votes. So I heard a point about having the conversation about morality versus reality. And that's particularly been difficult for us, even in one-on-one conversations. The last time it was brought up was 2017, and they asked for submissions, and we're still here waiting in 2021, and we're hearing that we'll have to wait again until it's retabled in Parliament. So I guess what I'm asking is, how do you navigate that space to get the work done, because decriminalization seems so far off and our law is really outdated and it doesn't serve the community right now.
Maybe I can answer that from our context. And in Kenya, of course, it was forever illegal until 2010, where it was, the laws were restrictive. And just having this conversation, the way I said in the beginning, is like getting the religious leaders on board has really been an uphill task. But just getting that one or two who are seriously in the community, because our champions were those religious leaders who had influence in the community areas, not really in the urban setups, because those are the ones who like go to the press, tell people what they want to hear and what they not what they need to hear. So like just mapping out, and I know it can be a little bit crazy, but just mapping out, like, are there champions in your areas, even if it's one, even if it's two, who can speak, and you'll be like, there's one religious leader and this is their point of view. That was how our journey began. There was this religious leader who was pro-abortion and pro-LGBT, and he was like, these things are happening. I have seen my congregants going through this, and it's a high time we need to talk about it. And of course, he was seriously attacked and opposed. But again, just mapping up and getting one or two, having conversations with them, training them, and giving them information, of course, which is very correct. Even when they go back there, it holds water. It can be a very strong point of defense in such volatile context when it comes to access to abortion. So whether it's one or two, just doing a map out and getting that one or two people, and then training them, having conversations with them, and just getting their real human stories as a point of entry towards engagement with religious people. I don't know, Sarah, if you have something to add.
I think probably just about the kind of working in the world that's still criminalized. I think there's obviously, you're doing the work yourself, so I don't want to tell you things you already know, but I think there's a point around like making sure you can access women on web. I'm sure you all know that kind of thing, and which is like the you can access the pills kind of for telemedicine. But I think in regards to what Adhiambo was saying, I think, yeah, getting one or two on your side is how you start the kind of ball rolling. And I think possibly there might be something in regards to the colonial aspect of it. I think you could probably maybe follow some of the things that they've done in the UK. So basically the only reason that Northern Ireland got decriminalisation in 2019 is that an English MP in Parliament spoke for us. So Alliance for Choice and other people have been doing this work for 30, 40 odd years in Northern Ireland, but only because an English MP spoke up for us did anything start to happen. So I don't know whether there's something that we can kind of link you up with somebody in the UK in Parliament who would be like helpful. Obviously that's me just thinking off the top of my head, but that's literally the only reason we've got decriminalisation is because somebody in the UK spotted it and pushed it. So I don't know, that might be something to think about. It's just me thinking.
There are some questions that are in the chat. Yeah, thanks, Shante. One of the questions was from Karen, who just had to leave, but we could talk about it. How often do people that you assist come back to you and join in helping, organizing, accompanying people's abortion journeys after having been on the other side? Is that something you've experienced? Yeah.
I think
maybe. Oh, sorry. Yes,
Sarah,
no, go ahead.
I was just going to say, like, I know the people who I have helped have definitely come back and been like, right, what can I do to support? Whether that's just pushing out a social media post, whether that's fundraising, whether that's actually supporting and being part of the kind of volunteer force for Alliance for Choice is another thing. But I think the point is that for me, that the work that Alliance for Choice do and everybody has done for years in the UK, it, to me, it's not something that anybody would need to come back to offer support on. They can, absolutely. If they're happy to, I would be like, yeah, the more the merrier. More kind of pushing for access. But I think the point is that in the real world, if we were all just going to access abortion services, we would just be like, thanks very much, nurse, see ya whenever, and just leave and never talk about, like, we'd just get on with it. It would just be part of matter of fact. So I think the idea that I would like to think people are expected to come back and offer their support and solidarity and stuff, but they can if they want. But I also don't feel that the people who access it need to do that. Just that's my only kind of belief.
Yeah, and just to add on that, because that also applies in our instances. There are many people we've helped, and they're like, how can we support? How can we fund? How can we be part of this process? And so we've really gotten very, very strong community champions and advocates, and who just help in our advocacy work. But again, we really have to be a little bit, okay, most of the times we're a little bit skeptical, because fine, there are people who can call in, get all the information, and then pretend they were served and helped, and still they're opposition, because the opposition really has tricks. So we definitely monitor, like we do not just allow anyone to support and work with us. But again, on the bright side, we've gotten very good people who've become advocates and champions years down the line of the work. They were helped, and they're like, even voluntarily being champions on social media and off social media. So that has applied even in our instance.
Thanks for that. Thank you. I wanted to invite Lily. If you wanted to ask your question on the mic, it would be great to hear your voice, if that's comfortable for you.
Either, yeah, of course I can. Let me just scroll up. Hold on. Yeah, I was just wondering because I don't know if any of you all have seen, saw also my message to the Inroads Network. Currently researching for my master's, kind of this political work, and as a hypothesis, kind of approaching it from the perspective that the work that you are doing is filling in the literal gaps in the human rights system. I just wanted to know from your perspective, if that's also how you see your work, as kind of filling in the gaps that the human rights system itself leaves for states and state governments to come in and make legislation that's restrictive. Yes, I hope that makes sense. Sorry for all the noises behind me.
So sorry, just to kind of clarify, are you asking that, do you think that the work that like Adhiambo and like Alliance for Choice and abortion doulas do kind of encourages the state to continue to make awful laws, or is that?
I guess just in general that you're doing like the actual work that the state should be doing, but isn't doing. It's actually doing the opposite in many cases, hindering this work from happening. If that clarifies it a little bit more.
Yeah, I think for me personally, as I said kind of earlier, this has been abortion has been happening for thousands of years. People have always found a way to access it if they needed it. And I think the work that we're doing is, well, the work that like I've been part of, don't want to speak for Adhiambo, but the thing is that the work will continue to be there, whether or not the legislation changes or we get the correct kind of infrastructure in Northern Ireland. People will still need abortions, will still need access. And I think the idea that personally, I think the UK should have obviously stepped up before now and let Northern Ireland and made Northern Ireland part of the rest of the legislation and made it all identical about the access. And I think that's a problem more with kind of the way Northern Ireland's governing system is set up. But I think in regards to kind of continuing to do this doula work, I think it's more to do with the practicalities of it, is that we have to continue to offer this. We have to continue to do this because we can't expect. I honestly said before this happened in 2019, I never thought I would see abortion access available in Northern Ireland in my lifetime. And I'm not joking at all. My mum spoke about it, and my mum's like in her 60s. And the idea that like it's always been happening, but we've just continued to push it because I think predominantly the lawmakers in Northern Ireland tended to be very Christian, very kind of men, very kind of, they didn't want to think. It was always about the family. And even looking at kind of Ireland's laws, it was all about the family. So I think the point is that what I'm trying to say is this work will always happen. And I think it will always continue to happen in some shape or form, even if we get the laws in tomorrow. Like it still will happen because there will still be people falling through the gaps. There's still immigrants, there's still refugees, there's still people who can't access things who are trans. There's still people who are upset, but they don't feel comfortable accessing things because they're LGBT and are asked odd questions about, you know, who the father is, if they're a person, you know, in a same-sex relationship. So I think the point is that the work will always be here. And I think the legislation will only ever support so many people to access it because they do only see so many people as part of the community or part of the world. So like, that was really badly explained. But basically, we're always going to have to do it because there's always going to be people who need it. That's my point of view from Northern Ireland. I'll stop speaking. Adhiambo, please speak. I just got very loud.
You've basically answered for me, and just pin the last nail is like the progress we've made has been immense. The work will continue whether the policymakers or the laws try to draw us back, but the work will definitely continue. Yeah.
Thank you so much for your comments.
Yeah.
As Katie put in the chat, I don't know if everyone saw that Rose, who's another Inroads member from Uganda, recently shared at another dialogue that we were a part of, that policy is always about the future, abortions are now. So yeah, I wanted to invite Laura. I see your question. I think we have time for one more question, so let's hear from Laura.
Hi, hello everyone. Thank you very much. And yes, I was just curious to know, especially in Kenya, how the legislation regarding abortion is pretty strict. So how do you deal with people calling you in need of an abortion and they cannot get an abortion by law? So which suggestion and support are you allowed to give them? Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much for that question. And of course, I'm going to give a very funny way that we handle that situation. And of course, the restrictions are when the life of the mother is in danger, if it's as a result of sexual violence, and if it's done under the supervision of, if abortion is done under the supervision of a trained qualified provider. Now, that is where the loophole comes in, because the trained provider is the one who does an analysis and says, this person or this person's health is in danger, A, B, and C. They may not fall under the first two categories, and this third category is where we use to provide information for women and girls who do not fall under the first two categories. And with the service providers we work with who are trained, and these are doctors, clinical officers, midwives, and nurses, we're like, fine, if a person reaches out to you and they say they've been referred to them by Auntie Jane, please help them. Do the analysis. And whether it's abortion by choice or abortion by circumstances, do whatever it is you have to do. And I began by saying it's a funny way of just handling that. And give them a medical analysis and make sure you just like help them. Do whatever it is that needs to be done medically possible. Do an analysis, give a report, and just ensure that women and girls have access to these services. Two, uh, telemedicine is something that is really taking shape super quickly. And for women and girls who need access, and they can do self-administration at home, we provide, number one, the information. Number two, we work with service providers to just ensure that women get the packages at their doorstep. And of course, we call these packages chocolates. So when you package them, you're like, yeah, these are chocolates. No one will be able to like look through what is inside there. And we help the women and girls manage their own abortions from home. So number one, it's just working with service providers who've been trained and values clarified to ensure that women and girls have access to safe abortion within our legal context. And number two, just taking advantage of the space where telemedicine applies. So in most cases, those are the instances where we ensure that women and girls have access to safe abortion within our legal context. We use the law to ensure that women and girls have access. Whatever loopholes there are, whatever provisions there are, that is the information we provide, and the women and girls end up having access. So we just twist the law to our advantage and ensure that women and girls have access.
Thank you, Adhiambo. Thank you so much. Thank you, Sara. Your passion, your investment, your energy investment, as someone put in the chat, and your openness to share and kind of be here with people from very different contexts has meant so much over this brief session that we've had a chance to be together. I'm sure that there's many more people here who there may be a lot more things, questions that come up for you. Just so everyone knows, these conversations, these dialogues will continue. But do join me in thanking and appreciating both Adhiambo and Sara for being here today. Adhiambo, despite having no electricity, had their laptop on full charge just to pull through. I think the lights have come now. And yeah, we all have different kinds of situations given the lockdowns and all of that that's happening around. So appreciate taking the time amidst your busy hotline hours and everything else that's going on with your organizing. It's truly been a pleasure, both Sara and Adhiambo, to get to know you and see the parallels in the work and learn from these very different contexts. So yeah, I wanted to thank everyone who is in the audience as well, who's been listening in. This session will be recorded, will be shared on the Inroads website. There are a few more spacious solidarity dialogues to come, and we do hope to gather later this year after the dialogues as learning groups, as cohorts, as slightly longer term spaces around these different themes. So if that's something that's interesting for you, do let us know in the evaluation form that's in the chat just now.